because I think it underscores the brilliance of the founding of our country, is that there is some element of incompetence written into the foundation or the formation of our government. So the checks and balances idea is that these guys are not supposed to be able to accomplish too much, because we're not trying to make sure that they have too much power. So I know that's something we get frustrated with, and obviously we want returns on our investment. We're going to be paying taxes. We're going to vote for people, all that stuff. Yes, so yeah, we want that, but there is a certain sense in which now we've flipped that and said, yes, we have expectations on our political class, but we flipped that to say, now we want everything that we want to come from these people that were never meant to give us these things. And they were supposed to be perfectly not that powerful.
Right. And but at the time, the line on Trump was that he is this historic anomaly, that he came out of nowhere. We've never had anyone like this. And, there's ways in which that's true in terms of just like, I think his internal psychological makeup. But what I was trying to say is in terms of he's actually the kind of inevitable, grotesque extension of a trend that had been propagated by presidents essentially dating back to FDR. Mm-hmm. Like, that he actually, if you look at it from a different angle, he's part of a lineage that is bipartisan and that stretches back a while. And what we kind of in the doc, what we attempt to do is kind of go from individual case study to individual case study of different presidents, FDR, Truman, JFK, and a specific kind of new attribute that they added to the presidency. An attribute that is unconstitutional and deeply unhealthy for a democratic republic, right? Yeah. But being like, yo, all these different features of Trump that you're now kind of horrified by, we kind of did this to ourselves. We did this to ourselves. Can I say one interesting thing, though, which is back then, it was still, we didn't know, like, it was early enough in the Trump presidency, you didn't know how much of the formal powers of the president he would actually use, right? Because he got gifted all sorts of kind of grotesque, unconstitutional powers by his predecessor, Barack Obama, who everybody wanted to say was like clearly just this was a dramatic break. And we're like, no, man, like you have Obama, signing off on drone strikes of American citizens, and everybody being real quiet about that.
Yeah.
And like, if you think about it for a second, like, this is probably insane that a single person can just rain death on American citizens. And so Trump inherits this like package of powers that were clearly not intended to be afforded the president. And it was to be seen how much he would use them. What was kind of remarkable 4 years later is how reluctant he was to use them. That the Trump presidency became almost purely theatrical. That the only thing that he really cared about was the media circus, was the storytelling aspect, was winning on Twitter, was winning the cable news cycle, and how little he was willing to kind of aggressively embrace and use a lot of the actual powers of the office itself.
Yeah.
And that actually is kind of like the next grotesque evolution, where it becomes purely theater. It's not even about power anymore. It's purely about the theater of the grand demon or the grand savior, depending upon your politics, and us just fighting about him in 12-hour Twitter cycles.
Well, this is where the Jimmy Carter thing comes into play, right? Because what's Jimmy Carter doing in 2020, which is just a funny title, by the way, is I love your approach here, because you're doing what you actually say is, oh, I know where this is going. And you kind of flip things on its head when you say, if you don't like Trump, well, then vote Democrat. Well, you say, well, if you don't like, that's where you think you might go. If you don't like Trump, well, then maybe we're looking at the presidency totally wrong. And maybe Jimmy Carter wasn't as bad as we think he was, because he was trying not to be a demigod. He was not trying to be a monarch or create demagoguery, which we blame Trump for. So maybe our problem is all of us looking so deeply to these people as our savior.
And so Carter was basically the only president of the last 100 years who really explicitly made a point to reject the deification of the presidency, and he got punished for it. He became one of these, the select ignoble few that lose their reelection bid. And he says in the doc specifically, like, a lot of people want the president to be their god, to be their king, to be royalty. And I don't want to do that. Like, I'm a simple peanut farmer, man. Like, and you could I mean, he doesn't have, there's plenty of things in his policy record that I disagree with, but in terms of setting the groundwork for a lot of the kind of more radical deregulation that happened under the Reagan administration, Carter had a big role to play with that. I mean, particularly deregulating the airline industry. Like, he did all sorts of things that a recent magazine would love, but doesn't really get talked about because the standard media narrative about him is that he's a mediocre failure. He's only a mediocre failure because he wouldn't play the game of constantly billing himself as the God, King, Savior, which Trump clearly had no compunctions about.
Right.
He's more than willing to play that game, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. All right. So so there's so much more we could say there, but essentially we're seeing right now this play out, right? Because of course, because of the dishonesty of the media, we talked about how fascist Trump was, but we're seeing complete overreach by the federal government in a continued basis with Joe Biden in a multitude of different ways that are too much to illustrate, but not the least of which is a vaccine mandate that was unconstitutional from inception. And then we hear him consistently make comments like, I don't know if this is unconstitutional or not. And then all of us are just like, oh, Joe.
You can catch brand new episodes of Indie Thinker with Reed Huberman every Monday and weekly bonus episodes to keep you thinking throughout the week. But you have to subscribe and click the bell to be notified when new episodes drop. If you enjoy this content, make sure to like this video and share it with friends.